Echoes in the fog, the sky was a deep shade of gray, as the last traces of sunlight disappeared behind thick storm clouds. The winding road stretched ahead, flanked by dense forest on both sides, shrouded in a creeping mist. Daniel adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, eyes flickering toward the GPS screen. No signal. The two words blinked on the screen, casting a soft glow in the darkened car. He sighed, glancing at the fuel gauge. Half a tank left, not great, but enough to get him to the next town. He had left the city early that morning, hoping to reach his uncle's cabin in the mountains before nightfall. But as luck would have it, road closures had forced him onto an unfamiliar detour. A lonely stretch of road with no signs and no signs of life. A sharp thud startled him. His fingers tightened on the wheel door that had come from the back of the car, like something hitting the trunk. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Nothing, just the fog curling along the road, swallowing the world behind him. He told himself it was a loose branch or an animal scurrying into the woods. Still, the unease lingered as he drove further. The mist thickened, clinging to the windshield, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. The road twisted sharply, and as he rounded a bend, he saw the figure standing in the middle of the road. Daniel slammed the brakes. The car skidded slightly before coming to a halt. His breath caught in his throat. The figure remained motionless, barely visible through the fog. It was a woman, wearing a long, tattered dress that clung to her frail frame. Her face was obscured by shadows, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to drive away, but something about her stillness felt wrong. Was she hurt? Lost? He reached for his phone, still no signal. Taking a deep breath, he flicked on the hazard lights, opened the door, and stepped onto the damp asphalt. "Man, are you okay?" His voice was swallowed by the fog. The woman didn't move. Daniel took a cautious step forward, and then she took a step backward. Not a normal, hesitant movement, but a sudden, sharp jerk, like a marionette yanked by invisible strings. A chill crawled down his spine. He froze, heart pounding in his ears. The woman remained still, her head slowly tilting further to the side, as if gravity had forgotten how to hold the pride. Something was wrong, terribly, terribly wrong. He turned back toward his car, and then he heard it, a whisper, not from the woman, from inside the car. A voice, soft, distorted, like someone speaking through layers of static. Daniel spun around, his eyes darting toward the open driver's side door. The car's interior was dark, empty, or so he thought. The whisper came again, closer, not inside the car, behind him. The woman was now inches away. Her face was still obscured by the fog, but up close, he could see her lips moving, murmuring something he couldn't understand. A mix of sounds that didn't belong together, words that shouldn't exist. His body moved before his brain could process the fear. He lunged for the car, slamming the door shut just as the woman lurched forward, her fingers scraping against the glass. The engine roared to life. He hit the gas, the tires screeching against the wet road. Through the mirror, he saw her standing in the same spot, watching as he sped away. Her head still tilted at that impossible angle. The mist swallowed her up, and she was gone. Daniel's breath was ragged, his hands white-knuckled against the wheel. He needed to get out of here, find the nearest town. But as he drove, an unsettling thought lodged itself in his mind. The voice in the car. He had heard it before she was close. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay focused. The road ahead stretched into darkness, lined with endless trees that loomed like silent sentinels. But something felt off. The tones were too familiar, the trees too uniform. He had been driving for at least 20 minutes. Why did it feel like he was going in circles? His hands trembled as he checked the fuel gauge again. The needle hadn't moved. A sinking dread settled in his stomach. How was that possible? He kept driving, telling himself he was imagining things. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe the stress of the night was playing tricks on him. But then he saw it. The figure in the road, standing exactly where she had been before. His breath hitched. No, that was impossible. He had driven too far. It couldn't be her. He hit the brakes again, tires screeching in protest. The woman didn't move. This time, however, something was different. Her head, which had been tilted before, was now completely upside down. Daniel's vision blurred with fear. He wasn't imagining this. He wasn't tired. Something was wrong with this place. His fingers fumbled over the gear shift, slamming it into reverse. The moment his foot hit the pedal, the woman moved. Not toward him, but beside him. The passenger door, which had been locked, swung open. A breath of ice cold against his skin. And then, the whisper returned. "You shouldn't have stopped." His entire body seized with terror. The voice was inside the car that next to him. The engine sputtered. The radio crackled with static. And in the reflection of the rearview mirror, a figure sat in the back seat. Daniel didn't think. He threw the car into drive and sped forward, swerving around the woman in the road, the tires barely gripping the wet pavement. The figure in the mirror was still there, a shape shifting in the shadows. The whispers turned to laughter, low, guttural, unnatural. He refused to look again, refused to acknowledge whatever was sitting behind him. He just kept driving, pushing the car to its limit, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then the fog lifted. The road changed. The trees thinned, giving way to an open highway. A sign loomed in the distance. "Welcome to Ash Hollow." The moment he passed it, the whispers stopped. The air inside the car was suddenly normal, though the oppressive cold was gone. Daniel finally dared to glance in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. He pulled into a gas station, his hands shaking as he cut the engine. He sat there, breathing heavily, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Then, slowly, he turned to check the passenger seat. A single, wet handprint was smeared across the fabric. Daniel swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. He wasn't staying here. He wasn't stopping again. He was going to find a hotel, lock the door, and pretend none of this happened. But as he reached for his phone, something on the screen made his blood run cold. A new notification, a voicemail. His fingers trembled as he pressed play. At first, only static. Then, a whisper. "See you soon."